Okay, so today I'm going to show you how I assemble the teapot after throwing the different forms. This was my lid that you saw me throw. I turned it over and trimmed the top and left a little button there. I'm going to add something to that, but it fits pretty snugly. I did a little hand trimming over here, and so I need to come back and kind of level that out a little bit more. And the fit is good. You can see I was a little disappointed in myself because I was picking up my teapot, and when I did, I picked up and I went right through this lid. So this teapot is only going to be for demonstration purposes. I won't actually use it. But that's what happens when you get sloppy and just start to pick things up like that instead of always grabbing them by the base. I also turned this over and trimmed the bottom so that it's nice on the bottom. Um, and now I'm ready to assemble the pieces. So this piece is just going to get set on there, but my spout, I need to do some modifications to. You remember I threw this the other day, so it's leather hard at this point. And what I started to do is I turned it upside down. And if you look inside, it was pretty thick, which is going to be for most of my high school students. So what I'm doing is instead of going on the wheel and trimming that out, I'm just taking a knife and trying to even that out on the inside so that it's not as thick as when I initially threw it. If I'm getting better as an artist, I won't have to do this step. But when you guys are first starting out, it's good to remember that we want to make things thin and light, but that there are ways that you can make things work even if it starts off a little bit on the thick side. So now I've cut down on my thickness there a good bit, and I could go even further. But because this is just going to be a demo, I'm not going to go that much further than that. So the next thing I want to do is I want to kind of hold this up and take a look at what the spout looks like if I use the whole spout, if I use part of the spout, if I've got an angle on there. And when I like the way that it looks, I'm going to take kind of a mental picture and sort of draw that picture in my head. I already did it on this one, but just looking at that, I think I want to cut over this way a little bit too. So I'm just drawing out what I saw in terms of the profile of the pot, and then I'm going to carefully, I should do this on camera, and then I'm going to carefully, with like an X-Acto knife, start to cut that profile that I saw off of the spout so that I can connect it to my teapot and get a nice angle. So again, this is getting a little bit too dry because I'm waited a little bit longer than I probably should have. But I can come back and kind of soften that transition between those things and then test it to see how it fits on the side of the pot. And that's not too bad. I got to take away a little bit more here to get rid of that bump. Maybe a little bit here. And I've got this pile of shavings that I can actually use to fill in gaps because it's going to fit nicely with my piece. So I'm going to take my sharp knife, take away a little bit more on this inside edge here. Be careful, of course, so that it kind of tapers into the body of the teapot. And then I'm going to dunk it into some water so that it starts to soften up. And if I was doing this for real, I would probably leave it in there for just a little bit because it's so dry. But that's a decent little fit right there. So now I'm going to trace around where it's going to connect. That's going to give me an idea about where to soften up. And I'm going to put in this general area one big hole, or I can go in with my X-Acto knife and I can do multiple smaller holes, which would serve two purposes. This one won't be functional, but if it was functional and you were actually going to brew some tea in it, you could use leaves, and when you were to pour your tea out, the leaves would get caught behind that, and the tea that would come out wouldn't have the leaves in it. And it also maintains the integrity of the wall so that when it's firing, it doesn't want to slump down on you. Now dip this again. I'm just going to score up the entire inside surface. And I'm even going to take a little bit of this thick slip paste that I've made. I'm going to attach using that to fill in some of those gaps. Soften that back up with a little bit of water. It got a little bit dry over the weekend. I'm going to paint this area so it's nice and wet. Score that area up too. All around. And then, as I always do, I'm going to repaint everything. So it softened up a little bit. I slipped it. And I'm going to score this guy up one more time. Paint him with a little bit more water as well, so everything's nice and soft and wants to bond together. And then I've got that attached on there, and I'm going to come back now with clay and or some of my little shavings, a little bit of slip, and I can start to fill in my gaps so that this smooths into that. Come back with a knife or a nice wooden tool. You can see I filled in some of those gaps that are there. And I can start to add a little bit more chunks of clay to start to make this transition and this transition look nice. All that's left is to make a handle like I would make any handle. Attach it to the opposite side, or it could go over the top. That could be another way that I could do it. My teapot's almost done.